Rio Bravo is a timeless Western classic that brought together legendary stars and unforgettable performances. Led by John Wayne, the film became a staple of American cinema, celebrated for its action, charm, and iconic characters. But behind the scenes of this 1959 masterpiece lies a somber truth. Many of the beloved actors who brought the story to life have since passed away, some under tragic and heartbreaking circumstances. In this video, we honor their memories and explore the real-life struggles, final days, and lasting legacies of the stars of Rio Bravo. Don't miss this emotional tribute to the legends of the Old West. John Wayne was born on May 26, 1907, and played the role of Sheriff John T. Chance in 1959 at the age of 52. In Rio Bravo, Wayne's portrayal of Sheriff Chance was textbook stoicism, a man of few words and unshakable integrity, embodying the mythic ideals of the American West. Audiences revered him as the ultimate cowboy hero, a figure of rugged independence and moral clarity. Born into a financially unstable household in Winterset, Iowa, John Wayne, then Marion Morrison, was raised by a domineering, emotionally distant father and a mother who favored his brother. As a boy, he walked miles to school and endured ridicule for his oversized frame and awkward social manner. His quiet resentment simmered into adulthood, masked by bravado and control. Though Wayne achieved stardom in westerns, he faced early rejection, including a humiliating demotion from lead to prop boy after a poor screen test in the early 1930s. His relentless ambition bred tension on set. He was known to intimidate directors and undermine co-stars. Wayne's most public scandal erupted in 1971, when a Playboy interview revealed his unapologetic support of white supremacy and American imperialism. Hollywood elites distanced themselves, but Wayne doubled down, becoming a political lightning rod. The Failure of the Conqueror, 1956, in which he played Genghis Khan in Yellowface, remains one of the most racially insensitive and critically reviled roles in history, and reportedly exposed him and the cast to radiation that may have led to their cancers. Privately, Wayne was no sheriff. He had 3 failed marriages, all marred by jealousy and infidelity. His children described him as emotionally unavailable and quick to anger, with son Patrick once revealing in a rare interview that Wayne believed feelings were weakness. He was a chain smoker, drank heavily, and had a well-documented addiction to painkillers in his later years. Wayne died on June 11, 1979, in Los Angeles, at the age of 72 from stomach cancer after years of denial and delay in treatment. At his death, his estate, comprising real estate, cattle ranches, film royalties, and investments, was valued at approximately $50 million. Ricky Nelson was born on May 8, 1940, and played Colorado Ryan in Rio Bravo in 1959 at the age of just 19. As the slick young gunslinger with quiet confidence and razor-sharp aim, Nelson brought youthful energy to the film, captivating audiences with both his screen presence and musical interludes. But behind the cool charm of Colorado was a young man trapped in a life he never truly chose. Born into a showbiz dynasty, Ricky's entire childhood was scripted. The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet wasn't just a show. It was his reality, filmed inside their real home, and the performance never ended. He was bullied at school for being a TV kid and suffered from identity confusion well into adulthood. Ricky's fame skyrocketed in the late 50s, but he was never comfortable in the spotlight, cripplingly shy and riddled with imposter syndrome. By the late 60s, the music industry had evolved without him, and his clean-cut teen image turned into a curse. He spiraled into substance abuse and surrounded himself with enablers. His 1971 divorce from Sharon Kristen Harmon was ugly, involving custody battles and rumors of infidelity on both sides. Friends later admitted Ricky struggled with depression and would isolate for weeks, obsessed with reclaiming past glory. He attempted a comeback with Garden Party, but his bitterness at being rejected by the same crowds that once adored him never truly faded. Financially, he suffered from mismanagement and bad investments, and in his final years, he played small clubs just to stay afloat. On December 31, 1985, Nelson died in a fiery plane crash in DeKalb, Texas, at age 45. The crash was caused by a suspected faulty cabin heater, and drugs were found in the pilot system, adding further tragedy to the event. At the time of his death, his estate was worth around $5 million, far less than what he had earned at his peak. His legacy, while beloved by fans, is marked by a haunting duality, a life scripted too early and a man who never got to write his own ending. Dean Martin was born on June 7, 1917, and played the role of Dude in 1959 at the age of 42. As the tormented Deputy Dude in Rio Bravo, Dean Martin delivered one of his most haunting performances, a former gunslinger drowning in alcohol and self-loathing, clawing his way back toward dignity. The vulnerability he brought to the role struck audiences hard. But Martin's real-life demons were not an act. They mirrored the role too closely for comfort. Born Dino Paul Crocetti in Steubenville, Ohio, to poor Italian immigrants, Martin barely spoke English until his teens and was mocked cruelly for his accent and poor literacy. He dropped out of school in the 10th grade and began working in steel mills, boxing rings, and gambling dens, often running numbers for local gangsters. Those years hardened him, and he learned early to hide pain with jokes and alcohol. Despite fame for music and comedy, Martin struggled with a deep sense of isolation. He loathed rehearsals, often arriving late and drunk, and clashed repeatedly with producers. His biggest career disaster came after his split with Jerry Lewis. Hollywood assumed Martin's star would fade without the duo's dynamic. For years, he was frozen out of major roles, written off as an arrogant has-been. He returned only after taking supporting roles, like Rio Bravo, to prove he could act beyond slapstick. Still, his Rat Pack image, booze, women, and aloof charm masked a man spiraling. Martin's personal life was a carousel of failed marriages and distant parenting. He married 3 times and fathered 8 children, but rarely showed affection. His daughter Deanna later revealed that he spent more time at poker tables than at home. The death of his son Dean Paul Martin in 1987 plane crash devastated him. Friends said he never recovered emotionally, retreating further into seclusion and alcohol. Dean Martin died on December 25, 1995, in Beverly Hills, at age 78, from acute respiratory failure due to emphysema and lung cancer. At the time of his death, his estate was valued at roughly $30 million, including royalties, real estate, and Sinatra-era memorabilia. Walter Brennan was born on July 25, 1894, and portrayed Stumpy in Rio Bravo in 1959 at the age of 65. The character, crotchety, limping, and fiercely loyal, was the comic relief and secret backbone of the film, delivering both laughs and wisdom from behind the barred walls of the town jail. Audiences adored Stumpy's grizzled charm, but Brennan's real-life personality was far more polarizing. Raised in Massachusetts to an Irish family, hit hard by financial struggle, Brennan's early years were colored by poverty and the death of his father in a tragic accident. As he climbed the ranks in Hollywood, Brennan became one of the most decorated character actors in film history, winning 3 Oscars for Best Supporting Actor, a feat never repeated. But success came with a dark side. Brennan was intensely paranoid about communism and was known in private circles for explosive rants, including conspiracies about Jewish control in Hollywood. During the Vietnam era and civil rights movement, he openly called Martin Luther King Jr. a communist agitator and opposed integration, beliefs that alienated many collaborators. His political extremism was so severe that studios stopped offering him major roles in the late 1960s, despite his popularity. Though painted in public as an affable cowboy, many insiders described him as bigoted, controlling, and mistrustful. Still, Brennan was shrewd with money. He invested heavily in California real estate and owned a sprawling 12,000-acre cattle ranch and multiple citrus farms. He also owned stakes in a bank and a radio station, ensuring his fortune outlived his film career. Brennan died from emphysema on September 21, 1974, in Oxnard, California, at the age of 80. Years of smoking had destroyed his lungs, and he reportedly died bitter and isolated, believing the America he fought for no longer existed. At his death, his estate was estimated at $10 million. Impressive for a character actor, but his legacy remains complicated, beloved on screen, but privately aligned with ideologies that Hollywood now tries to forget. Pedro Gonzalez was born on May 24, 1925, and played Carlos Robandi in Rio Bravo in 1959 at the age of 34. As Carlos, he brought life, loyalty, and a necessary lightness to the tense and masculine narrative. Audiences adored his quick wit and nervous energy, but behind the laughs was a man forged by poverty, discrimination, and deep insecurities. Born Ramiro Gonzalez in a Mexican-American family in Texas, Pedro grew up in brutal hardship. His father, a vaudeville performer, died young, leaving Pedro to roam the streets selling tamales. He left school at 7, unable to read or write, and lived in fear of being discovered as illiterate. He learned to memorize lines with help from his wife, but humiliation haunted him throughout his career. Early in Hollywood, he was relentlessly typecast, usually as bumbling, broken English comic relief, and was frequently mocked behind the scenes by white producers and actors. Though John Wayne famously discovered him on You Bet Your Life, it's whispered that Wayne later tried to block him from roles in more dramatic pictures, fearing he'd ruin the tone. Pedro longed to play serious, dignified characters, but Hollywood saw him only as a joke. His biggest career failure came in 1961, when he was abruptly dropped from a planned sitcom centered around a Mexican-American family, allegedly because executives believed his accent would alienate white audiences. In his personal life, Pedro was fiercely loyal but lonely. His wife, Leandra, supported him emotionally and functionally, shared his contracts allowed, helped him with scripts, and managed their finances. However, their marriage reportedly suffered under the strain of Pedro's chronic anxiety, insomnia, and secret alcohol dependence. He was devastated when his younger brother died in a car accident in the 1970s and grew increasingly reclusive, rarely seen in public by the 1990s. He died on February 6, 2006, in Culver City, California, of natural causes at age 80. His estate included a modest suburban home, old residual checks, and personal memorabilia, with a net worth under $1 million. Claude Akens was born on May 25, 1926, and took on the role of Joe Burdett in Rio Bravo in 1959 at the age of 33. As Burdett, the loud, violent drunk whose arrest catalyzes the entire plot, Akens delivered a chilling performance that made audiences loathe yet remember him. His portrayal was raw and unflinching, a man with a sneer and a short fuse, embodying the kind of wild masculinity that threatened law and order. Raised in a working-class home in Bedford, Indiana, during the Great Depression, Akens grew up with a distant father and a mother overburdened by poverty. He was often mocked for his heavy-set frame and deep voice as a boy, leading him to bury his insecurity beneath sarcasm and an obsession with masculine dominance. After serving in World War II, he studied drama at Northwestern, but Hollywood didn't welcome him with open arms. His unconventional looks and intensity got him cast mostly as villains or brutes. His career, though prolific, was marred by resentment. He never forgave the studios for relegating him to second-tier roles, even after starring in hit series like Moving On and The Misadventures of Sheriff Lobo. One of his most devastating career moments came in the late 70s when he was abruptly fired from a recurring role after allegedly clashing with network executives over political views he aired publicly. He had been vocal in his far-right beliefs, which alienated colleagues. His personal life wasn't much smoother. Though married to Teresa McKeever for decades, Akens was rumored to have had several extramarital affairs, one of which reportedly led to an undisclosed paternity settlement in the mid-1980s. He also struggled with compulsive gambling, losing hundreds of thousands during weekend binges in Vegas. In his final years, he was diagnosed with stomach cancer, which he kept hidden from most, continuing to audition and attend conservative political fundraisers while secretly battling pain. He died on January 27, 1994, in Altadena, California, at the age of 67. His estate included modest property holdings, a collection of vintage motorcycles, and some residuals from syndication, totaling a net worth of roughly $2 to $3 million. Ward Bond was born on April 9, 1903, and played Pat Wheeler in Rio Bravo in 1959 at the age of 56. Pat was a straight-talking, fearless cattleman who tried to lend a hand to Sheriff John T. Chance, only to be gunned down in cold blood. Audiences admired Wheeler's integrity, a quality that seemed to echo Bond's on-screen persona across hundreds of roles. But in real life, Bond was far from the noble figure he portrayed. Raised in a deeply religious but emotionally distant household in Nebraska, Ward endured a harsh, disciplinarian father who viewed emotions as weakness. At school, his size made him a target for bullying until he discovered football and brutality as survival. He carried that aggression into Hollywood, where he earned a reputation for brawling, boozing, and harboring deep prejudices. A rabid supporter of WAC and one of the loudest voices in the anti-communist witch hunts of the 1950s, Bond helped blacklist several colleagues, including actors he once worked alongside. There were rumors, and proven but whispered persistently, that he was the anonymous source behind a studio letter that ruined a young actor's career for suspected leftist sympathies. His ugliest professional moment came when he reportedly assaulted a writer on set over a script change, leading to a quiet settlement out of court. His personal life was equally turbulent. Though married once, the relationship was cold and childless, and there were long-held suspicions about his closeted bisexuality, something he vehemently denied in private, often with rage. Despite chronic epilepsy and a decline in health exacerbated by decades of hard drinking, Bond never softened, remaining fiercely combative until his last days. He died suddenly on November 5, 1960, in a Dallas hotel from a heart attack at age 57. He left behind an estate valued at approximately $5 million, including several California properties, rare firearms, and a sizable film residual portfolio. Hollywood mourned him publicly, but privately, many were relieved the era of Bond's dominance had ended. Sheb Wooley was born on April 10, 1921, and was 38 when Rio Bravo 1959 premiered, though his part was ultimately removed. Although credited in Rio Bravo, Sheb Wooley's appearance never made the final cut, a fact he rarely discussed publicly. Officially, it was attributed to scene trimming, but some insiders claimed his performance was too comedic for the film's tone. That contradiction, serious cowboy by day, outrageous novelty singer by night, defined Wooley's entire life. Raised in a dusty Oklahoma town, Wooley came from a violent, poverty-stricken household. His stepfather was reportedly abusive, and Wooley later admitted he learned to ride and shoot as a way to stay out of the house. Music became his escape, but his big break, Purple People Eater, would typecast him forever as a novelty act. The success brought millions of records sold, but also sneers from serious musicians who considered his work a joke. Wooley battled industry ridicule for decades, and insiders say he often drank heavily alone after concerts, depressed over never being taken seriously. His alter ego, Ben Colder, recorded parody songs with slurred vocals and drunken personas, a bit that fans adored but masked Wooley's growing dependency on alcohol. He was fired from Haw in the late 70s after a reported backstage breakdown, screaming at producers that they turned him into a clown. Though he returned to westerns in small roles, his credibility never fully recovered. Wooley married 5 times, often to much younger women, and had multiple strained relationships with stepchildren who accused him of being emotionally manipulative and obsessed with his fading fame. A lawsuit in the 1980s, filed by a former business partner over royalties, nearly bankrupted him and forced the sale of his Nashville home. He died on September 16, 2003, in Nashville, Tennessee, at the age of 82, after a long battle with leukemia. At the time of his death, his net worth was estimated at $2 million, mostly from music royalties and old TV contracts. Kerry Jr. was born on May 16, 1921, and was credited in Rio Bravo 1959 at the age of 38, though his scenes were ultimately cut. Originally cast in a minor role, Kerry Jr. was expected to appear as a background cowboy in Rio Bravo, but his footage was mysteriously left on the cutting room floor. Rumors swirled that a wardrobe misstep or a sarcastic quip aimed at director Howard Hawks may have cost the part, though no one confirmed it. Fans of westerns knew Kerry well, not for Rio Bravo, but for his presence in the John Ford Stock Company and his soft-spoken, humble cowboy characters that brought authenticity to the genre. Born into silent film royalty, Kerry grew up in the imposing shadow of his father, Western legend Harry Carey Sr. That legacy was both a blessing and a curse. The weight of expectation crushed his early ambitions, particularly a short-lived singing career in the 1940s, which flopped after one disastrous performance in front of industry executives. Though he found steady work in westerns, he was often typecast. Off-screen, Kerry was known to clash with directors if he felt dialogue lacked authenticity, leading to his blacklisting from 2 major productions in the 60s. The biggest heartbreak came when John Ford excluded him from The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, a decision Kerry called a quiet betrayal in his memoir. He struggled with alcohol for years, and when he got sober in the early 70s, his friendship with fellow actor Robert Mitchum, built on late-night binges, disintegrated. His marriage to Marilyn Fix, daughter of character actor Paul Fix, was one of the few constants in his life, but even that had its strains. Friends noted Kerry's increasing isolation in his later years, often consumed by paranoia about being forgotten. He was rumored to have burned scripts and memorabilia from his career during a particularly depressive episode in the 90s. Kerry passed away from natural causes on December 27, 2012, in Santa Barbara, California, at the age of 91. His estate, worth approximately $3 million, consisted mainly of property and residuals from his decades-long television work. John Russell was born on January 3, 1921, and took on the role of Nathan Burdett in Rio Bravo in 1959 when he was 38. As the calculating and cold-blooded antagonist trying to free his jailed brother, Burdett oozed menace without ever lifting a finger, an eerie quiet that made him one of the film's most memorable villains. Off-screen, Russell's life bore a similarly stoic facade, masking deeper cracks beneath. Born into a once wealthy family that lost everything during the Great Depression, Russell's early life was defined by shame, hunger, and a suffocating pressure to restore the family name. Though he served bravely in World War II and received commendations, he returned home emotionally paralyzed and rigid, a condition that would haunt his interpersonal relationships. Russell's Hollywood career took off thanks to his matinee idol looks, but his reluctance to play the studio game and a rumored short temper led to frequent clashes with producers. He was blacklisted, not politically, but socially, for being uncooperative after walking off a Warner Brothers shoot in protest of last-minute rewrites. Whispers followed him of a hush-hush affair with a married studio executive's wife, which allegedly led to a multi-year quiet ban from major lead roles. His biggest career failure came in the late 1960s when he attempted to direct and star in a vanity Western project that collapsed after a scandal involving embezzled investor funds. He was never charged, but the project's financier lost millions. Russell's personal life was equally stormy. 2 divorces, one with an actress who publicly accused him of emotional abuse, and a son who later disowned him, citing his father's emotional vacancy. As his health declined from emphysema in the late 80s, Russell lived in near isolation, taking only small parts in Clint Eastwood films as a way of staying relevant. He died on January 19, 1991, in Santa Barbara, California, at age 70. His net worth was modest, under $1 million, comprising a small house, a vintage car collection, and residuals from Eastwood's films. Malcolm Adterbury was born on February 20, 1907, and was 52 years old when he was cast as Jake, the stage driver, in Rio Bravo in 1959, a role that never saw the light of day, as all his scenes were cut from the final version. Though unseen in the final film, Atterbury's intended presence speaks to his status in Hollywood as a dependable, often overlooked character actor. Known for his odd, sometimes unnerving screen energy, he made his mark in suspenseful films like North by Northwest and The Birds, often portraying small-town men with something sinister behind their eyes. His upbringing was surprisingly privileged. He was born into a wealthy family in Philadelphia, but his relationship with his parents, particularly his domineering father, was strained. Determined to forge his own path, he rejected the family business and joined a vaudeville troupe, touring in rundown circuits and reportedly developing a morphine addiction during the 1930s following a severe back injury. Though he eventually beat the addiction, it haunted him for years, influencing his performance style and mental health. He opened a theater in Vermont in the 1940s, but financial mismanagement and a scandal involving unpaid actors led to lawsuits and the theater's abrupt closure. Hollywood gave him a second chance, but never stardom. He was respected but never famous, and colleagues noted his reclusive nature and eccentric behavior, such as carrying a Bible wrapped in aluminum foil to block government signals. Atterbury married twice. The second marriage ended in bitter divorce after his wife accused him of psychological abuse and manipulative control, claiming he recorded their conversations and mailed cassette tapes to her relatives as evidence of betrayal. He died quietly on August 16, 1992, in Beverly Hills at the age of 85 from natural causes. His estate, once buoyed by his inheritance, had dwindled to a modest value under $1 million, with most of his assets tied up in obscure stock holdings and an old, debt-ridden property in Vermont. Estelita Rodriguez was born on July 2, 1928, and portrayed Consuelo Robani in Rio Bravo in 1959, also at the age of 31. In the film, Consuelo was warm and spirited, a balance of tenderness and pride beside her husband Carlos. Estelita's on-screen charm masked a far darker reality, one of abuse, betrayal, and mysterious death. A Cuban-born singer, she found fame young, dazzling nightclubs across Havana before being imported to the U.S. by Republic Pictures. Hollywood quickly commodified her beauty, casting her in sultry, stereotypical roles, never letting her escape the fiery Latina trope. Her childhood had already taught her to perform. Her father abandoned the family, and her mother pushed her ruthlessly into the spotlight, demanding perfection and obedience. Estelita was married 4 times, but all her relationships were marked by dysfunction. Her second husband, actor Grant Withers, was violently jealous and emotionally unstable. He died by suicide in 1959, leaving behind cryptic notes many believe referenced Estelita. Insiders whispered for years about a secret affair between her and Herbert J. Yates, the powerful and married head of Republic Studios, who allegedly blocked her from more serious roles when she refused to continue the relationship. She tried to reinvent herself in the 1960s, pushing for a dramatic biopic of tragic Mexican star Lupe Velez, a role many believed paralleled her own haunted life. But on March 12, 1966, Estelita was found dead in her home. Official reports cited influenza, yet no autopsy was ever performed, and many suspected a cover-up, especially since she had complained of being followed days earlier. She was only 37. Some rumors even linked her death to old Hollywood feuds or a secret pregnancy. At the time of her death, her estate was minimal. She had no significant properties, and her total assets were valued at just under $100,000. Walter Barnes was born on January 26, 1918, and portrayed Charlie the bartender in Rio Bravo in 1959 at the age of 41. Though his role was small, his presence gave grit and weight to the saloon atmosphere. Charlie was the kind of bartender who'd seen everything and said nothing. Off-screen, Walter's story was far more turbulent. A former NFL lineman for the Philadelphia Eagles, Barnes was a decorated World War II veteran who brought his combat discipline into Hollywood, but also his inner demons. His early acting career rode the coattails of friendships with icons like John Wayne and Clint Eastwood, but industry insiders claimed he was a man with a quick temper and fragile pride. In 1950, he became infamous for a covert scandal in the college football world. While working for LSU, he was caught spying on Oklahoma's practices before the Sugar Bowl, a black mark that followed him even into his film career. Though he found a niche in westerns and war films, he was never fully embraced in Hollywood. He relocated to Europe in the 1960s, disillusioned with the studio system, and starred in a string of spaghetti westerns and pirate films where he enjoyed modest fame. In Rome, he fell into a stormy relationship with German actress Britta Wendel, whom he married and divorced within 3 years. Their 2 children were largely raised by Wendel, as Barnes's drinking and volatile moods made him difficult to live with. Later in life, he was diagnosed with diabetes and suffered several complications but refused to slow down, appearing in minor roles until the mid-1980s. He died on January 6, 1998, in California, just weeks before his 80th birthday, from complications related to diabetes. At the time of his death, his net worth was estimated at $2 million, thanks largely to European syndication royalties and savvy real estate deals in Rome. Despite the money and film credits, Barnes died estranged from his children and alone, a tough man whose heart, according to one former co-star, was worn out long before his body gave in. Thank you for watching as we reflected on the lives and legacies of the actors from Rio Bravo who are no longer with us. Their humor, charm, and unforgettable performances brought joy to millions and helped shape the show into a classic. While their journeys ended far too soon, their impact lives on through every scene, every laugh, and every memory they've left behind. As we honor their lives, we're reminded of how deeply television can touch our hearts. Join us next time as we look back at more stars who left us too soon, but whose stories continue to shine.